and welcome to episode 49 of the PowerScore LSAT podcast. I am Dave Kaloran in Napa Valley.
And Jon Denning, down quarantined in Los Angeles.
That is right. You and I are both holed up in our respective abodes, avoiding all other people.
Yes.
Mostly.
I've still got a quarantine buddy, although I think she's out of here tomorrow. We'll see.
I'm sorry to see her go.
Yeah. It's a lovely thing to watch, but I'll be sorry to see her go
too. My family's not going anywhere, and I'm fine with that. So
yeah, fair. And I hope anyone listening to this is equally self-isolating.
Yes, stay at home, stay away from other people.
Yes.
It sucks, but let's make this all go away as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah. And we keep churning out this content to hopefully help you pass the time.
We've amped it up. And we'll talk about some of the stuff that we're doing right now. But first, let's get to the important topics of the day.
The key of quarantine.
While we dream of better days.
The key of quarantine.
Cocktails. What are you drinking today?
I've mixed it up. My stash is running a little low, but there is always tequila to be found. And I found some Bloody Mary mix as well. So I've gone with a Mexican version of the traditional Bloody Mary called a Bloody Maria. Just reposado and Zing Zang, which is my favorite Bloody Mary mix.
I want you to know that it sounds terrible to me.
I want you to know that you're wrong.
I don't like Bloody Marys in general because I'm not... I like tomatoes and tomato sauce, but I do not like tomato juice.
Interesting.
And then tequila with tomato juice sounds like, it's a form of torture.
You would think. You got to doctor it a little bit. So I put a little Worcestershire sauce in there, a little bit of lime. I've got a celery stalk. So if anyone hears me crunching at some point in this episode, that's what that is. It's good. I like it.
You know what those things are? Those things are distractors. They're like wrong answer choices in an LSAT question where that looks really attractive, but the whole goal is to take you away from the main event. And in this case, it's because the main event isn't that good.
Interesting. Is that why they accessorize Bloody Marys so much, in your opinion?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
100%. You got to be distracted from what it is. It's a terrible drink. I respect people who drink it early in the day because I understand what they're doing, but man, I don't like them.
Yeah. Well, this is not a breakfast Bloody Mary. I'm sad to report.
No, it is not.
We're doing this in the afternoon, but a Bloody Maria, I recommend it. How about you? Let me guess, something tropical.
Always. I'm going to run through the entire palette of tropical drinks here, the full catalog. This is an old classic. This is a rum runner. The one thing I will say as forewarning is this drink is full of alcohol. It's also quite tasty and sweet, which is exactly the opposite of what you're drinking.
Tasty, but I'm not sweet.
No, you're not sweet. But it has got a bunch of rum in it, both light and dark rum, and then a couple of different kind of liqueurs. Blackberry, which I had, banana, which I did not. So we pureed a banana. That was the closest we could get to that.
Interesting.
And then some juices like orange and apple juice. And then it comes out again, a beautiful pink, red color.
It's mostly rum though, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's why I like it, because I like rum.
I like rum too, just not with all the accoutrements.
I would have been fine as one of those kind of semi-homeless people wandering around the Caribbean. Just kind of having drinks at the Soggy Bottom or the Soggy Dollar Bar.
Is that a beach tent? What is semi-homeless?
That's the semi-homeless. I don't know. You live out on Jost Van Dyke or something, all alone when under the stars because there's no threats around.
Fair. You and I both have some friends down in the islands. I've got a buddy who runs a big resort down in St. Thomas, I believe. So they're as happily quarantined as anyone could hope to be.
It's a good place to be, I would suppose, except for the fact that there's a whole bunch of people from outside those areas trying to get in because they're thinking exactly what we're saying.
Yeah, anyway. That's exactly right. They're headed there for the rum.
We're not going there.
Well, your drink sounds borderline delicious.
It is good.
Good for you, buddy.
Good for me.
What do we listen to? Speaking of good, this is
your choice.
It is, yeah. An old musical hero of mine for the song today. Sadly, on the heels of Kenny Rogers, Bill Withers has passed away, which fills me with a deep regret. But we're playing a song of Bill Withers today called Lean On Me, which I'm sure everyone listening to this knows. We'll link to it. But I think there's a secondary meaning to this that you and I would both appreciate, which is we're doing our best to be here for anyone out there during this time. We're trying to be the backbone that people can lean on.
Some kind of distraction, something
like
to take away from all the weirdness and negativity that is floating around us.
Not to get too sappy about anything, but yeah, lean on me feels somewhat appropriate during this time. And you know what? Lean on each other. Find a study buddy, a distant, remote study buddy.
FaceTime with them.
That's right. Yeah.
Do it that way. Now, it is curious to me because you lobbied heavily for this, and you're not a very sentimental person at all. I wanted the song "Ain't No Sunshine," which I think is probably my favorite song by him, and was also, they used it. I can't remember whose version it was that they used in the middle of like Notting Hill for this kind of scene that they did that I thought was really cool. Where we went from like spring to winter back to spring again.
Wait, that wasn't. This is a deep callback. That wasn't the Hugh Grant movie you were an extra in, was it? Was it Notting Hill?
It was not Notting Hill. I would be 10 times prouder if I'd been in Notting Hill with Hugh Grant.
Instead, you were in...
that movie was called Our Sons, and it had Julie Andrews and Anne Margaret in it.
That's pretty
impressive. And I still have yet to really ever see it on the screen, but I know it played on TV because, we told our parents and everything. They saw it. So
yes, for anyone out there wondering if Dave's got a history in film, he does.
I'm 1 degree removed from The Sound of Music. I'm telling you, that's pretty cool.
I want to make
and 4 weddings and a funeral, for that matter.
Yeah.
Or is it 0 degrees? I can't remember what it is.
It's 1.
It's 1.
That's impressive. Anyway, for anyone unfamiliar with Bill Withers' catalog, sadly he's passed at the age of, I think, 81, but he's got a deep and beautiful back catalog of songs that you should investigate immediately. They'll maybe help get you through this. Unless you take Dave's suggestions, in which case they'll just make you cry.
That's not my intent. That's just the way that it works.
I know. Ain't No Sunshine does feel kind of appropriate these days, sadly. Let's see if we can brighten people up.
Let's do that. Let's talk about what's happening in the LSAT world.
Yeah.
And a series of interesting events are coming up, I would say. The first on the list from a calendar standpoint is that LSAC has announced a second webinar that is a follow-up to the webinar they did about a week and a half ago, which was on COVID-19, as is this one. So it's got the same title, Law School Admission in the Time of COVID-19. It is this Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And the reason, they do these webinars with some frequency, and we often don't talk about them. We're talking about this one because I am hoping, praying even, I don't do a lot of that, but I don't know, somehow, of the belief that they will make the right decision here and they will talk about the April LSAT directly without just blowing it off.
It would be wildly inappropriate not to, in my opinion.
100% agreement. In my opinion, they either have to cancel it or they have to announce that, boy, they're having this at-home LSAT. Nothing else is acceptable to me. And since I don't think they're going to have the at-home LSAT for April, and I can't really fathom how they could do it logistically, my expectation is that this Wednesday they'll cancel the April LSAT.
I think that's absolutely right. And again, hoping that we're both wrong.
About it being canceled, or?
Well, the at-home thing. No, dude, if they don't cancel April in person... My goodness.
You should have done it 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. But no, anyway. I would love to see them somehow have a feasible solution to offer this at home. I just can't imagine how they do that by April or May, frankly, as we've discussed. But there is this thing on the 8th where they're going to talk a little bit with more deans of admission about what happens next in terms of law school. Again, borrowing from your borrowing of, was it Gabriel Marquez's title, Love in the Time of Cholera, LSAT in the Time of COVID.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
The post that I wrote about it. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting. I know some people are, if you haven't listened to us talk about this before, you're tuning in and you're thinking to yourself, at-home LSAT? What world are you guys living in? Unfortunately, we're living in this world right now, and some strange things are happening, and they have been debating this. I think it's all about logistics. I was talking to someone earlier today and they were like, well, they do LSAT writing. Why can't they do this? I'm like, it's not about doing 100 people at a time or having months and months to get all the administrations of the LSAT writing done. It's about the fact that LSATs are taken over a several hour period with thousands of people, often tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
That is a logistical nightmare. And that is where the problem is. Can they deliver a test to you at your computer at home? For sure. They already have digital LSATs. They already do it with their familiar site. They have the technical capacity. We know that. This is not the problem. The problem is, how do they successfully proctor an event of that size? I don't see how they do it just yet. So maybe they'll surprise us. And if they do, I will welcome it with open arms. But unless they have that on Wednesday, they need to cancel this thing and just get it over with.
They have said that by the 10th of April, they will have made a formal announcement. So this is kind of not only pushing into that deadline, but the perfect time for it. Just say so. Yeah. I keep getting the question too, Dave, and I know you do as well, about the GRE and the GMAT, both having gone to at-home administrations.
Yeah.
The big difference being, of course, is that, again, it's individualized. It's not like this Saturday. People can take them whenever.
And they've been doing that for years. Mm-hmm. This is a skill set that they are quite used to in terms of what they're doing. They've already delivering it to remote third parties over technology they don't control directly.
Yeah.
It's a totally different type of race that they're running versus what LSAC is faced with when you try to give the test all on the same day at roughly the same time, depending upon time zones.
Yeah, it's an entirely different thing. Especially to do for the first time ever and with a huge audience. So I don't see that happening in April or May. Here's hoping by the summer, though, they can start to roll that out.
Agreed.
Fingers
I do
crossed.
think, though, that once they go ahead and make this announcement, and presumptively will say, yes, they're going to cancel like everybody expects and knows that they will, that's when we'll start to see law schools move to a different position and sing a different tune on deadlines.
Yeah, law schools haven't announced any deadline changes yet that I've seen, but I think
there's been some.
Yeah, as of that announcement, I think that's when we'll start to see more widespread vocalization of deadline changes.
Some of these schools have begun to understand, I don't think there's going to be an LSAT anytime soon, and that means if we really want to give ourselves the best shot at having the best class, we already need to open up deadlines. And I've seen some schools talk about like July and August. So it's starting to happen. The real landslide will come when they cancel that April LSAT, because every school will be like, there's not going to be an LSAT till at least June. And even that's dicey.
Yeah.
So that's when we'll see all this happen.
I agree with you. My beloved Masters golf tournament has been announced to have been moved to November, a 7-month delay. So clearly, optimism runs low these days. And for good reason.
Yeah, and then you and I were talking about it. I was like, I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, even you're not like optimistic about that. So I'm going to book a flight anyway. But
you do that.
Thanks, buddy.
I don't think the problem is going to be this summer. I think it's actually going to be this fall and winter.
Yeah, for anyone who heard Dave cough, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm okay.
He's okay.
That's because I'm talking.
It was a rum runner cough, not a COVID cough.
That was the rum runner right there. No, I'm fine. I actually feel
great. Let's talk about what we know can be delivered at home, which is something you and I are actually doing this week.
Yes, this Thursday.
Yeah. We have got a webinar that Dave and I will be hosting, interestingly enough, on LSAT Reading Comprehension, a skills and diagnostics tests webinar, which is a really interesting recent addition to the Reading Comprehension Bible. A chapter that we added to it maybe last year with some really, really cool information. I think cool information and some utilities that most people have never even thought about, much less experienced.
I've never even seen anybody address it in the format that we did. And, what I always say about LSAT preparation is, yes, a lot of the stuff you might read, you might be like, I understand that. Yes, I know what a premise is. I've heard that. It's not so much the stuff that you already know about. It's the stuff that you encounter where you're like, oh, that opened up my eyes, or that really helped me unlock how this was going to work. And I think this is one of those things as far as reading comprehension, in part because it's really focused on the idea of how will you determine where you're strong and weak?
Yeah.
Because reading comp can be really tough to do that. And you may think, well, I need to be better at this. But that's a really indistinct feeling. You need to know specifically what you need to improve upon. And that's what this is really designed to do, to say, let's pressure test you and examine where you really are going right and where you're going wrong when you're reading.
Precisely. Yeah, with logical reasoning, you can look at question types or reasoning types, like I'm not good at conditionality or I'm struggling with weaken. Reading comp doesn't have that same degree of like finite accuracy a lot of times built in, and that's what these tests that we're going to describe will allow you to determine. It's a very, very powerful way to self-analyze.
I think so, and I think the visuals that we'll see in that seminar will help it out as well, because we'll be able to define it on screen as to this is how we want you to do this is what you should do.
Yeah.
So if that is something that sounds interesting to you, and I mean, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be interesting, of course, that is coming up this Thursday, April 9th, and that is at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. It is free. You can sign up on our website. It's powerscore.com, and then go to /free seminars.
Yeah, I'll note too that even if for whatever reason, I can't imagine you have some social conflict. I hope you don't.
You have no excuses.
Yeah. But if for whatever reason, if you cannot make that time, if you do sign up, you'll be sent a link to the recording of it because it's going to be recorded as well. So you'll get a chance to view it after the fact. And that's true for anyone who attends as well, obviously.
Yeah. It'll be cool.
It's worth the registration, even if you can't be there live. Although I hope you can be.
It's funny, right now this is, it feels like a slow period for LSAT preparation, but it really isn't. It's just that the fact that there's so much uncertainty. Since I don't think there's an April LSAT, the pressure came, way off as well. But, our classes still continue on and our seminars still continue on. Obviously, we're going to continue on podcasting because we want to get the information out there and let people know that the resources are there for them.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's free, like these podcasts and these seminars. Sometimes it's, classes. You have live online classes running all the time. I think the next one starts probably in like 4 or 5 days on the 11th.
On the 11th, I think this weekend we have one coming up. With one of my favorite instructors of ours, in fact, this guy, Nick who's
Pavich.
Fantastic. So, yeah.
Yeah. So
you'll notice, I hope, for anyone paying attention in these troubling times, that Dave and I are going to try to be more visible, more present, because we know that you're out there looking around for things to do to continue to move forward. So we're going to do our best to stay as in your periphery as possible.
I spent all weekend on Twitter. I don't know that my wife was happy about it. But just trying to address the uncertainty. I think you might be wrong about that,
actually. I think the more you're out in the office and not in the house, the more happy she probably is.
No, that's not the case at all. Fortunately, I have confidence in saying that. It's not a guess. I know that she's like, I'll come back in.
I miss you. I made drinks. Like, all right.
That's right. Let's watch a movie, let's have some fun. But it's that kind of thing where we talked about the April test and whether May would happen and June, because so many people are uncertain about it, that we really wanted to go through that. And one of the things we also did was that through our main accounts, we said we're going to do some more Mailbag podcasts. So if you have questions, shoot them at us. And we were fortunate to get a bunch of messages, number one, but they fell into 2 categories. And my original conception for this episode was, let's go down into law school choices. I've gotten a bunch of questions recently where it goes all across the board. One student was asking me about, should I go to Colorado or New Hampshire? Another student was asking me, do I go to Loyola Marymount or Pepperdine or Chapman or San Diego? Someone else was, do I go to Chicago or Harvard? And each one of these decisions is difficult because there's money involved. Sometimes there's big scholarships. Sometimes there's not big scholarships. A lot of times there's a really high-ranking school, and then there's a lesser-ranked school. And so the calculus of those decisions is fascinating to me. It's something that I've talked about for years, and I feel really comfortable with. And so we're going to do that, but we're not going to do that today. We got so many other questions that we decided that we would talk a little bit about the admissions process and go through some of the questions that were more about what's going to happen and what should I do in terms of, applying and taking the test. And then I think right now our plan is, let's just come back tomorrow and do another episode. And it may be 2 days. Who knows? We'll have to see how I feel tomorrow. And then we'll go through the school admission decisions, and then we'll really share some of the details of like what the scholarship was, what the choice is, what the person wants to do with their, their career and so forth.
I like that. This is a sort of a gapped bridge too, which I like, because we're going to talk more about specific admissions, but to me, this is a little broader, I think. I hope.
I think it is.
Yeah, as opposed to Colorado versus New Hampshire in that very specific sort of instance. This will allow us to talk about some more general things.
A decision like that, though, is really, it's a prism through which you can view a ton of other decisions. Mm-hmm. A couple of mid-ranked schools in that situation is going to be different than someone who is looking at Chicago versus Harvard, 2 schools in the top 6. And then you've got like the regional decision where it's like Loyola versus Pepperdine and so forth, where you're trying to figure out, well, I want to stay in LA or Southern California. Yeah. The dynamics and the dimensions of these decisions, they really cover all sorts of different bases, and we chose them for that purpose. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because, the idea that someone could look at it and be like, well, I don't live in Southern California, but it's like, yeah, but we're talking about really regional decisions. That applies to everyone.
Yeah, if you're in New York and you've got Cardozo versus Fordham, right, and Cardozo gave you more money, then all of a sudden it's, what to do. You got to figure it out. And as people will see, in many instances, I want to know what your career goals are because that should be something that really informs your decision.
Yeah.
And has a big effect on it.
Financial situation, your debt aversion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about today's questions, though, which, as you mentioned, are a little bit maybe broader ranging.
Broader, more interesting to the process as a whole, both this year and next year, I would say. So what do we have up first here, John?
Where to begin? Well, I normally begin to distill these down to the question itself, but I like the first couple of sentences here, so I'm going to read those too. Hi, guys. Thanks for doing this. You're welcome. I have a few questions others may find useful. Here's the first. For those that are on a wait list, how can we show schools we're still interested and we can't visit? And this is particularly relevant now, of course, sit in on classes, etc. And do you expect more waitlist movement with COVID-19 affecting people's decisions? Great question.
It really is, because usually there are things that you can do. You can reach out, you can go visit the school, and those have largely been eliminated. And so it's kind of a blunt answer here. There's not much you're going to be able to do. If you are on a wait list, I assume that you've already written a letter of continued interest and continuing interest. So hopefully you've done that and you've already expressed that you really are interested in the school and you do want to be considered down the line. Usually you can't write those every month. The only reason you could is if you were just like, creating world-breaking achievements and you're like, look at this great new addition to my resume and background. So if you're that one person out there in the entire nation, you keep on doing that. If not, for the rest of us, you don't get to write them every month or even every 2 months. At that point, you start bothering the admissions offices. It's kind of like, well, you're just saying the same thing. So usually if you have a later update that you're going to give, I'm still hoping that there's some kind of additional information. Now, usually during this period of time, we'd be like, oh, I have a new LSAT score that improved a couple of points. Right. Or I got my grades from the latest quarter and they've risen. Unfortunately, these things aren't happening because there's no LSATs and a lot of schools are pass-fail. So we're not seeing the normal markers that you could use as justification. And so as much as it hurts most people, I'm going to counsel you to hold back. There's not a whole lot you can do. The law schools are going through this just like all of us. And so they're trying to navigate what are very turbulent waters for them and about to get more turbulent. And so you don't want to be the one who pops up as the complainer, sore thumb, the person who's bothering them, what have you. So chill out.
Yeah, this is probably not the best time for your name to be the one they recognize.
Yeah, I hate to say it because normally I'd be like, I'd have plenty of advice. You could do this, or this.
Get on their radar. Yeah, but right now.
Not right now. Yeah. Now, that said, things are about to loosen up. So when they cancel this April LSAT, that'll start to open up things. When the deposit deadlines and then the May 15th where they indicate how many individuals are double deposited, that each one of those events is actually going to loosen things up and change the dynamics. So we're right on the edge of all this happening. It just hasn't happened yet. So just hold on for the time being. All right?
Precisely. I completely agree. These are strange times. Schools know it. Don't essentially don't overburden schools with your own persistence, insistence, pestilence.
Well, if you think about it, this has been it was a slow cycle before all this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Decisions seem to be coming out generally at a slower, lower rate than what we'd seen in recent years. And then all these admissions offices just got sent home.
Yeah.
And so
that's what you would expect,
reorganize.
by the way, with this many additional LSATs. So, like, we got one in March, we've got one in April, we've got one in June. Schools can take their time a little bit because the numbers are changing. It's shifting sands.
Excellent point. They were expecting these new updates. So, and now they're at home trying to like adjust to the new workflow,
Right.
and their 8-year-old who's screaming that, the TV's broken or whatever. So
that felt oddly personal.
It was not.
Okay.
Sometimes I think about other parents and I'm like, I feel bad for you, especially if you have more than one kid. I'm happy with mine, so.
Yes, as you should.
She's a good girl.
You
know what she's recently learned, John? You'll love this when you see her.
Okay.
She has, she got a hoverboard, and she is just a maniac with it.
Can I ask what that is? Because I'm seeing like Marty McFly, and I know that's not the case.
She really wanted it. It was part of the Girl Scouts thing. She had to sell all these cookies, and that was part of the prize. She didn't quite make it, but we helped her out and got her there. But it is the strangest little contraption. It's basically got 2 wheels, and there's like a bar between it, and you don't think that you could stand on it or manipulate it.
I know what these are. Yep.
But she can fly around on this thing and turn on a dime. It's pretty impressive.
That is pretty impressive, considering the last time I saw her screaming through the living room, she was on a little toy horse.
Yeah. The unicorn.
You know exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Of course.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know precisely what it is that you're talking about, but now it's all about the hoverboard.
Yeah, the girl who's been staying with me bought it's called a one wheel, which is one of those skateboards with that giant wheel right through the middle of it.
Weird.
And it's motorized. You kind of lean like a Segway.
Okay.
She keeps trying to get me to ride it. She's been screaming through the neighborhood. I gave her one of my motorcycle helmets, and she's been tearing off into the distance. She's like, come ride. I'm like, I want no part.
No. Anyway. The Segway is what I was trying to think of. That's what these hoverboards are like, is that they took away the upper part of the Segway and just left the wheel mechanism.
Yeah, those things are crazy dangerous, and when she breaks her arm, I'll buy more Girl Scout cookies or something.
Quiet now.
Okay. Don't want to jinx it.
She took one big tumble early on in the first day, and since then, I've been duly impressed. I think it was because she said, how am I doing? I said, you're doing good. She said, not great. And I was like, not great yet. And she got mad.
All right.
And she immediately was like, oh, I'm going to practice for like 5 hours and show you.
It's your fault, Dad.
And she did.
There was a follow-up question. Back to the matter at hand, to that waitlist idea and what you do to essentially show schools your enthusiasm, your commitment. The follow-up question said this, same person. How should we ask or request more scholarship money after the deposit deadlines, just in case there's money left over in the budget, assuming many students will defer their admissions, which I think may, in fact, be the case. How do you request more money?
Very nicely. If you're going to do it.
Yeah.
To me, this question is it's implying, well, hey, there's going to be a bunch of extra money that's left over. And so that's reasonable to think that I could get some of it. And I understand that assumption. However, this is where the uncertainty of what we're dealing with becomes a real problem. First off, it's really important for people to remember you can't automatically defer and just do it on your own. It is a 2-sided decision. The school has to allow it. So if they choose not to, you might not be in a situation where, you have that choice. And it also may mean that a lot of people then continue on to school this fall. Mm-hmm. If you're school A and 50% of your class says, I'm going to defer, you can't have that. That is a catastrophic revenue shortfall. Colleges are not exactly flush at the moment, and they're dealing with a huge revenue loss right now just from like people not being on campus and the loss there.
Yeah.
And so I have real concerns about I'm going to defer. Sure, some people will, they always do. And there are legit reasons to do that. And those people will still get those waivers. But I'm not sure that everybody who's thinking right now, I'm going to defer and it's not going to be a big deal. Yeah, when it's one person, it's not a big deal. When it's thousands, then it actually is a big deal. The second thing is this, is if they are actually looking at lower numbers for law school because they've just lost this last 10 to 15% of the class, that is going to affect class size, that is going to affect revenue, and that revenue directly plays into the amount of scholarship money available. So keep that in mind. It's not a guaranteed thing that there's going to be all this extra money floating around. Now, that said, the way you ask for money is the way you always do. You're cool about it. You're low pressure. You try to explain to them how interested you are in the school and that you really want to get after it. And this is where you want to go. You try to give them a value proposition as well.
Right.
Gosh, I've had a great offer from this school. And if we could just get closer to that, I'll commit now. You make it so that they see, all right, this person's, all in with us. We just got to sweeten the pot a little bit. Or if it's going to take a lot more, be clear about it.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to cavalierly say, yeah, if you don't give me $15,000 more a year, I'm out. Okay, that's probably not going to be successful. But if you need to indicate it needs to be substantial, otherwise I'm going to go to this other school and do that.
Yeah.
If you already know that's the case, what's the harm in saying it?
I've talked to a few students who seem to have this, I think, misguided view that now's a good time for me to get really heavy-handed with schools. Schools are about to be desperate, and I can really drive the point home. My begging becomes demands, and it's like, man, I don't think it's going to be quite that way.
Well, now here I'm coughing again.
Oh, don't. Now I'm actually starting to get nervous.
Oh, I'm fine, man. I don't know what's going on. I've been fine all day.
It's the bananas.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I like bananas, though.
Yeah.
I got to find out how to get banana liqueur, though, because that's an odd one, right?
Well,
anyway.
Don't come down here looking for it. It sounds disgusting.
They might have had a point if this had all occurred in the fall and over the winter. Then we'd be looking at extremely low applicant numbers. The problem is most of the applicant pool was already in the bag. They had already applied by the time this became as serious as it is now.
Yeah, this landed late in the season in a way.
Yeah, and so for law schools, this is actually generally good news in terms of like being able to get most of their classes in. Is there some movement there? Yeah, and we'll start to see what happens in the next month or two as LSATs get canceled and deadlines get extended, because that's when you'll see greater desperation. Mm-hmm. So if anybody who wants to pressure a law school, don't do it right now.
Yeah.
They're still holding on to the party line of everything's fine, it'll work out, it'll all be good. In 6 weeks, you might see some schools running around like we're gonna have real problems unless we add some students. That's when you can very politely step in and become the good guy.
Yeah.
In terms of what you're saying and offering what you need. But it never pays to be a jerk in these kind of situations. It very rarely pays in general. So don't be a jerk. Be super nice about it and prove to them that you're interested. Be patient. There's no rush right now.
Yeah.
There's some people who send me messages on a frequent basis, and I can tell how aggravated they are with the process. And it pains me because I'm like, guys, we're just getting into April.
Yeah.
The law schools are under no pressure to admit you right now. And I know it sucks because you saw someone else with, equal or worse numbers get in 2 months ago, but you just don't know what's going on. So that happens every year, and I always feel bad for those people because you can just tell how much it gets under their skin. But I always say the same thing. Wait until the end. Right. That's when we can make the decisions.
Yeah. If anything, I think all of this is going to really turn the tables, the tides in the favor of applicants. But as an applicant, you guys need to just be patient. It's going to happen. It may just be a little bit delayed this year. Be nice, be polite, be patient.
Yeah. And let's be honest, this year's worse than any other because now you've got this terrible layer over the top of it. So I sympathize fully. It's just that it doesn't change the truth of the fact that the law schools still have another, 5 weeks to make these decisions before anything, they feel really pressurized with it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next question.
Take it.
Hey, guys. I really enjoy listening to the podcast. All right, this sounds like somebody I want to have a beer with already.
Yeah, once again, thanks.
I'm applying to law school in the fall, and I'm looking at schools in the top 10 to 20. How much weight does having letters of recommendation from alumni of the school one is applying to have? So how much weight does it have? And I really like this question because letters of recommendation are always a big deal. And it's something that you can hurt yourself with if you choose the wrong people, and you can really advantage yourself with if you get the right people. So as we look at this, the first thing I'm going to say is I did a really long free seminar on letters of recommendation that I'll link in the podcast notes. I did it probably like maybe 2 years ago, but it is still completely applicable. And the answer here is really, it depends. If the person doesn't know you and it just happens to be that they're an alumni and that's why you've selected them, you've damaged yourself. Mm-hmm. Because the law schools will read that and be like, well, this person has been chosen for their name value or their alumni value. And what we asked for was for the person to talk about the applicant. So the applicant can't follow directions. It sounds like a harsh assessment, but it's also true.
It's true.
It's a black mark. It's kind of like, you didn't understand what the task at hand was. And I've said this before. Is it better to have a letter of recommendation from the governor who knows your parents really well? Not that I know any governors. Or is it better to have your manager from McDonald's who worked with you for 3 years, through high school and college or whatever? And most people are like, oh, it's the governor.
Yeah.
No, it is not. Because the governor's probably like, I've been friends with, candidate X's parents for years, and they're fine, upstanding citizens, and I'm sure candidate X will be as well. Yeah. How much more do I know about candidate X right now?
Right.
0. Whereas the McDonald's manager is like, yeah, I've known Jimmy for ages. Jimmy's one of the hardest working people I've ever worked with. He's really kind. Let me tell you about this time that he went out of his way.
Yeah, this and then all of a difficult Tuesday when the ice cream machine broke and Jimmy was able to get back there and churn. This is true, though. I mean, the prestige of the recommender never, ever outweighs the familiarity.
Yeah. In a perfect world, what you want is a high prestige recommender who knows you extremely well. All right. How many of us have that? Not too many. So unless you run in those circles, which means you're already incredibly privileged and advantaged, and you're probably going to be just fine anyway, you have to then think to yourself, what's the most useful thing? So my answer here is always, how well do they know you first? All else being equal, does the alumni thing help? Well, it doesn't hurt, but I also like to know, as an alumni, are they notable in any way? Yeah. Are they just another graduate who never gave back to the school and never did anything? That's not helping you. Or are they a graduate who has been involved in the school and with the alumni organization and has been out there making things happen? Yeah, that helps. But the first and the topmost priority is find letter of recommendation writers who know you well and who can tell stories about you that display what an awesome person you are.
Precisely. Yeah, I think it's also better to try to find someone from an academic background if you can.
I've seen this. I just use the...
No. I mean, you're spot on. I agree with you completely. But people ask me that a lot. Is it better to have... I've been out of school for 4 years. Is it better to have a professor that helped me with my thesis, or better to have, a manager, or better to have the governor? It's probably go with the professor if you can.
Yeah, the classic would be the professor versus some non-tenured adjunct professor or something.
Right.
And they'd be
or
like, oh, that's not...
or boss.
Yeah. You want someone who knows you, and that is the real key. So if letters of recommendation are something that's on your mind, watch the seminar I did, because I talk about that. I gave examples. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. You got pretty deep into it, too, which was great.
Yeah, I think I used examples of how to ask them to write things about you, the way in which to present ideas, even, some of the cool ways you can use letters of recommendation to shore up problems in your application.
Yeah.
So we'll link it.
Cool. Yeah, that's in there. If anyone's looking for ways to kill their time, there you go. That's a pretty useful one. So next question.
Hit me.
Hey, guys. Nice start. Hey. Hi. I'm wondering what you think would be the best for my summer planning. Stay at home is my short answer.
We'll see.
Don't make any plans. I think the situation is applicable to a whole bunch of uncertain university students right now regarding this coming summer. Here it is. My university offers the ability for students to take online courses throughout the summer. I could take 3 this summer over 3 months and feel relatively productive. Sure and safe bet. Wonderful. However, here comes the wrinkle. My initial plan was to take a prep course from the end of April to early June, right to July LSAT. Given that I don't even know if the LSAT will be administered in July, do you think it's a safer bet to just take the university courses online and leave the LSAT to the future, or even to the following summer? Or do you think there's a high likelihood that LSAC gets together? I almost read that as gets their act together, but that's not what it says. LSAC gets together and actually administers an online LSAT in July, in which case, well, I should focus more on prep from the end of April and start the studying process there. Thanks for your help. And then my favorite. I hope you guys are enjoying some much-needed Guinness.
Not today, but often. So
Not
thank
today,
you.
but
Yes,
we have been. So thank you for that.
that's the best closeout of any of the messages I think that we got.
It was a lovely finish. Thank you. So I suppose this comes down to like, how do you spend your summer in these uncertain times? That's really how I read this message.
I did too, and as is often the case, the first thing that jumped to my mind was a hedging strategy of sorts, which was to kind of say, well, I do think there's a decent chance they have their act together by the summer. But regardless of that fact, if you're going to study for the LSAT, starting earlier and studying for longer is never a bad thing. So my first thing that I would say is start studying now.
Yeah.
We've talked about this numerous times.
We talked about it in the very last episode. There's no such thing as too soon. No student ever complains about doing too much.
That's exactly right. People often say to me they wish they'd started earlier. I never hear anybody say, I wish it started later. So my recommendation would be to start now, which is funny because we were just talking about our LSAT classes that, are continually starting every couple of days right now. So take a class. I mean, this is what we do, for example. I know the value of sitting through an LSAT class and having time and no pressure to feel as if, well, if July happens, it happens. I'll be ready for it. If it doesn't, then I'll have even more time to go through this. Yeah. So an LSAT class can make a huge difference in your ability to take this test because the whole point is to make you better at it. They wouldn't exist if they didn't help to some greater or lesser extent. And we can debate that a different day, whose course does the most or is the most comprehensive or has the best strategies or what have you. But either way, I believe in what we do, and I know that it helps. And so it's easy enough for me to say, oh, go take one.
Right.
But it's also borne out from years and years of experience with students who are like, I started early, I felt good, I was comfortable, and I was able to go out and do as well as possible on the test.
Let me ask you a related question to this, Dave, because I'm curious to get your take. I've been asked by a few different students as things at universities have been transitioning to pass-fail versus graded courses. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, potentially, for students to take? Let's say you've got another year left of college. Would you want these pass-fail courses, or would you want something where you could actually pull an A or an A+ or whatever the case may be?
Well, I mean, it all depends on how I was doing.
Right.
If I was doing really well and they went to pass-fail, then I'm mad. If I'd been slacking off and, hitting kegs all the time, then I feel like I just got the get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah. Or if there were some classes maybe on the roster that I wasn't terribly confident about, but pass-fail, I can at least pass it. I may have pulled a B- or something, but I can at least pass it. Suddenly that's a gift.
Yeah, the differentiation here is those that were going to improve their GPAs are hating it. Those that weren't are loving it. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, the law schools themselves, they're not going to hold this against you. They're going to understand that we just went through something that is more than irregular. It's unprecedented in their memory. And so ultimately, it's not going to be a negative as far as that. But for those students that were attempting to kind of like pick up their GPA prior to applying, it's definitely a problem. I was talking to one of my friends who is in law school right now. And for her, this was a huge problem because she was actually doing really well in a couple of her law school classes. And they transitioned over to pass-fail. And she was like, I was about to, increase my standing. And that's been taken away. And this was like a really good term for me. So she's actually mad about it, and she understands the reasoning behind it, but then it turns out they're going to offer summer classes at her school, but they're going to grade those.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, that's great, but those aren't the classes that I was really looking to do well on. And part of her commentary was that they're actually offering summer classes because they've realized how disrupted the summer internship market is.
Mm-hmm.
So her view was very jaded. She was like, they're just trying to make more money at the school. So I'm not going to mention which school it was, but it was a very negative take. Like, they stole my grades now because my summer situation is completely unsettled, likely canceled. Now they're going to try to actually charge me for classes that they're going to grade me on. But these aren't the classes, that I really wanted. A little rough.
A lot rough, frankly. That's far from ideal. But at least she's got a chance to maybe gain some ground back.
She does, but I think she was looking to, get some awards out of these classes. These were the ones that she was really going to power through. So she's not pleased.
No, understandably so. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's in his final semester at USC. We were chatting over the weekend, and he's freaking out about the bar. Whether they're going to be able to even offer that in, I guess it'd be July.
They're not. In fact, the bar has been canceled at a number of locations. I think New York is a good example. And it's an interesting situation because with the doctors, a lot of the medical boards have said, let's move up their ability to practice. Let's make it so they can immediately start treating patients and helping because they understand how important they are. Mm-hmm. And some, legal entities have said, well, we should do that for lawyers too. And of course, they're not really the same, but this is really putting people who are graduating now and who are looking at the bar, they're putting them in deep jeopardy, especially if they can't have a bar for, say, 6 or 9 months.
Yeah.
The practicability of these people is just stopped. It is hugely disruptive.
Yeah, you've got these people coming out, a lot of them with tremendous amounts of debt and the inability to work in the field that they've just been working for 3 years really to get into. It's pretty grisly.
Yeah, they may waive that, but then they'll almost have a star next to their name. Oh, you were the non-bar year.
Is that the lawyer you want?
Yeah, it's not their fault. So, and of course, if you're looking to go to law school right now, in 3 years, this won't be an issue because this will have passed by then and we'll be in a situation where everything will be, as close to normal as it could be. So this is an acute problem for people who are graduating right now or applying for law school, but this is not something you would have to deal with upon completing law school in several years.
Presumably. I should note, too, and I know that this is a low likelihood, but anyone listening to this who's not sure about the legal profession as a future, if you're that far sort of premature into your journey, this is a really, really good time to start thinking about law school. The world's about to need lawyers more than ever. Whether that has to do with financial situations and bankruptcies or unpaid rent or whatever the case may be, medical malpractice, this is a time where lawyers are about to be at the forefront of demand, I think.
After doctors are
yeah.
done with being at the forefront, and nurses.
Yes. Yeah, after the medical profession, the legal profession is usually hot on the heels as things tend to go.
Yeah. Well, good luck to all the people out there who are working in the medical field right now.
Yeah, my heart goes out to you for sure. My mom, my sister, most of my family's in medicine. The girl who's been staying with me, she's a nurse and her clinic was shut down and she's wondering, should I go volunteer? And of course, the selfish side of me is like, don't you dare. But the other part of me is like, I understand your ambition. It's noble.
I don't know if that's what I call ambition.
I understand the
goals,
the impulse.
Yeah, she's got an altruistic side there where she's like, I want to go help. I'm trained for this. This is what I want to do.
She is, of all the good people in this place, she's 85% of them. And there's just the two of us. So
I think she's more like 98, and I don't even know her.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, that's still an easy bet.
Let's move on to the next question.
Yeah. You want to take it?
I don't know. Do I?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take it.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I love your podcast. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Or woman, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Please keep doing what you're doing. You've quelled a lot of my anxieties, and I appreciate that wholeheartedly. I apologize if this is long-winded, but I want to provide you with all of the necessary information.
Which I'm going to interject and say thank you for. Long-winded always beats abbreviated or incomplete.
Yeah, if you're providing information, don't apologize for being long-winded. I want that information.
Exactly.
So this is not a bad thing at all. So here's the background. I'm a certified public accountant, and I plan on applying for the 1L class of 2021. All right, so applying this fall to start attending next year. I've taken the LSAT twice, 161 and 164, and I'm signed up for the June exam. But since I have a stable career at Ernst & Young, I'm in no rush to apply this cycle. I graduated from GW in Washington, D.C., a cool university, with a bachelor's and a master's in accountancy. All right, so that's a pretty interesting graduating bachelor's and a master's. 3.3 was the undergraduate GPA while participating in Division I athletics. Powerful. I'm an African-American man, and I began using the full suite of PowerScore at-home study materials in August 2019. I'm glad we could help you get there first off, because you're looking pretty good right now. And thanks so much for actually using our materials. Really appreciate that. Let's continue on. I've taken 15 time practice LSATs, and I started with a 153 on the June 2000 test. All right, now you're up to 164. Struggle a bit with reading comprehension. And I've been doing some of your prescribed tests, which is a kind of cool thing. We talked about them in the podcast a couple months ago. We're going to talk about them again in our webinar that we mentioned earlier. Trying to improve upon my weaker areas. Here are the questions I have from an admissions standpoint. What do you think about the admissions cycle for the 1L class of 2021? So I'm going to take this one, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah, take it. No.
This has been a really slow cycle in terms of decisions. But when we take a look at next year, I mean, there's likely to be some uncertainty here. And nobody knows what's going to happen with the coronavirus situation, or whether law schools will even be having classes on campus. How that will affect, what goes on is really anybody's guess. It's probably, in my opinion, like 50-50 if we'll have classes in the fall.
Yeah.
Maybe more so at law schools. However, I think we may see a slight increase next year in the number of applicants. So I think they'll take their time making decisions, so we may have another slow decision cycle. But I think we'll be looking at a slight bump in terms of the number of people applying. What you often see in times of economic hardship is that graduate school has been a refuge. And it is completely reasonable and not unlikely to expect that if somebody has lost their job and they're really uncertain and they want to improve their position, that they may say, let me take the LSAT, presuming they're able to, and apply to law school.
Yeah. Or students who are in school and maybe the job market isn't quite what it has been in the past. They stay in school. Or they continue their education. We saw this in 2008-9 on the heels of some of the economic, I suppose that was more recession than depression.
Yeah.
Where the biggest peak that we've seen maybe ever in LSAT taking and law school applicants was 2009, 2010. And it was due almost entirely just born out of the economic crisis that we experienced right prior to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so your reasoning is sound there. And so we'll have to see, ultimately what happens. The follow-up question here was, are you predicting a surge in applications? I'm not sure that surge is the right word there. That seems really strong. Do I expect it to jump 25%? No.
Yeah.
Could it jump
more like a swell than a surge?
Yeah, 5 to 10%? Yes. Will that make this application cycle one of the most competitive in the last decade? No. I don't think it'll be the most competitive. I also don't think it'll be the least competitive. Obviously, it becomes more competitive than the year before, especially if this year turns out to be slightly low in terms of the numbers. So hard to say. It's really difficult to know what's happening at the end of this cycle, but it may be that currently there are some people who are like, I'm dropping out, or I'm not going to complete my application, or I'll withdraw my application and reconfigure for next year. Depends how many of those people we actually see here. Plus the people who are like, I need to get out of the current economy, and going to school for a couple of years is actually hopefully going to allow me to ride through that. So I could easily see like a 10% increase. A 30, 40% increase? No, I can't see that.
I'd be surprised by that too.
So next question. If the LSAT cannot be taken until July or September, will schools open 2021 applications later to give people more time? They won't open them later. They'll open them on time.
Yeah.
They want the window open as soon as possible. And I hate to say it because it's very crass on my part. It's all about the money.
Yeah.
No reason to delay the opening of the window. Get it open immediately. What I do think you'll see is the window will stay open a lot longer as they try to scoop up every possible person. And they may look at these 2 years as kind of like an unusual event where they just have to deal with uncertainty of smaller and then perhaps larger classes, and then hopefully getting back to normal.
Yeah, you know what's crossed my mind in a way is that this may change the definition of normal. That if this pushes the window, as it were, or the decision-making process on law school's part this year into, say, July, it could very well have ramifications into the coming years where they just extend the window itself because they've realized either they can do it or the benefits of doing so, if that makes sense.
I've thought this for a long time, and I agree with you. I think that's a really insightful comment about like what is the new normal. I don't understand a lot of the operations of law schools at times when I see this. They seem very boom and bust. When things are good, they want to just close up the shop nice and early and be done. Almost like they're like, who cares? We don't need to do the work. We got plenty of students. And then when things are bad, all of a sudden the desperation creeps in and they're willing to do all sorts of things they don't during so-called normal times.
Yeah.
I've thought this for a long time in terms of like deadlines. That schools who say, oh, we really want the November LSAT. And let's be honest, it's all the super high-ranking schools that try to play that game, the Stanfords of the world. But why? Why cut it off so early?
Yeah.
If I was a law school dean, and I don't care whether I was at Harvard or, Minnesota or where.
I didn't know what other school you were going to use to juxtapose Harvard. I was like, what's he going to say?
I went for the homeland school.
Yeah, I know.
Since my whole family went to the University of Minnesota for undergrad, they often jump to the forefront of my mind.
Fair.
But I would be the guy who's like, sure, we'll take June. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
If I can get one more excellent student because I decided to wait a couple of months and the staff had to work a little bit longer, I'm doing it.
Yeah. Or if one of these students who already qualified can somehow give better credentials by a later test.
Yeah.
Why not?
You're trying to create if you're really like motivated and aggressive as a law school dean, and there are some that are out there, I would be doing every possible thing to make this happen. And there is a ton of other things that can be done, obviously. So I'm just focusing on the way I would reconfigure admissions.
Sure.
But it's always struck me that they seem to particularly prone to feast and famine mentality. When it's all good, who cares? We can have excess and waste, and when it's not, then we have to act desperate. I'm like, you could build this out better.
Yeah. So I don't think any of this is going to delay the opening of the application cycle this fall. What I do think it could do is delay the closing of the application cycle in the spring of 2021.
100%.
Certainly
and schools,
this year. We know this year is going to start to get extended.
Yeah, schools would be wise to do that, and maybe even take a page out of the MBA admissions where they do rounds, first round, second round, third round, and they move deep into the spring. I would love to see law schools do that because there's just no good reason that anyone's given me where it says I have to stop after the January LSAT in terms of taking students. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Agreed. So this could actually be of benefit to future applicants, the way that this is all playing out.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Next part?
Well, the next part's really related. The next question here was, could the rolling admissions policy be changed due to the effects?
Lengthened, but not changed.
Exactly.
What's the incentive for a law school to change it?
Yeah.
If I can start taking good students in October, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, it's still going to roll. It just might roll longer, as it were.
Exactly.
And then finally, I think the last question in this was, would it be smart to wait until next fall to apply for the class of 2022?
That theory is built around the idea that the additional applicants that are likely to appear then make the cycle more competitive, and that depresses outcomes. Mm-hmm. So maybe I should wait a year. Normally, I'd be like, no, go ahead. In this case, I wonder, though, because this person has a really stable job and as said, admittedly, I'm in no rush. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. This is a really tough question because I could see actually putting in applications and seeing what you think the outcome is. And if you don't like the outcome, continue to work on things on your resume, the activities that you're involved in, and then apply the following year. Yeah. The only reason I hesitate to say that is because in general, as advice, that's expensive. You have to run through the whole CAS package and all the application fees. The money adds up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this person is fortunate to have a stable career at a great firm, so that may be less of a concern. So in this case, I would probably still go through the application, see if I liked what I got out of it, and if I did, move on to law school, and if I didn't, come back the next year, especially if I started to see that the numbers were really high. And that's part of the problem here. We don't know.
Yeah.
We're speculating, and although I feel like there's a reasonable justification to believe that numbers will rise, we don't know for sure. And you'd hate to be that person who's like, nah, I'm going to wait a year, and then discover that, oh yeah, the applications were 15% less, and you could have had some great outcomes. So if you really want to hedge, and if you work at an accounting firm, you probably do. And I would, because that's the approach I think is optimal here. I'd probably apply, go ahead, and then see how things work out, and take it from there.
Yeah, and as we said before in this exact episode, there's no such thing as starting too early when it comes to prep. So even if you start eyeballing a test later this year to apply, and you end up waiting a year, it's not going to hurt you in the least.
Well, and that's the other thing. This person is already sitting on a 164 LSAT.
Mm-hmm.
It's an excellent score. It also often indicates to me that if you can get a 164, you can get a 166. If you can get a 166, you can probably get a 168. And I'm not trying to like slide up the scale, so to speak, but you're pretty good. If you can score in the mid 160s, usually there's a way to improve your abilities and to actually get better. So I would think that that would be part of the approach here as well. First, for scholarships, because you've got some really attractive features, great undergrad school, solid LSAT score, you're a Division I athlete, you've got status, you're already looking really attractive. You punch up that LSAT score a couple more points, the real, some really amazing doors will start to open.
Yeah, I agree with that. So to this individual, if they're listening, I would start eyeballing a test later this fall, whether July or beyond. Know that the application window is going to probably open in September, as it usually does, and see what you can do for the fall of 2021 to start. Worst case, you wait a year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's go to the last question in this segment.
Yeah, a question that I like because in a way I think it sets up what we're going to talk about in the very next episode, which is some individualized school decisions.
It's exactly right. And as I said before, those are fun. And a lot of times, like as we're putting this down, when I got to this question, we labeled it as Loyola versus Miami versus Cardozo versus Chapman. Because that's what it looked like at first.
Yeah.
But that's not how it turns out. So I think this is a perfect bridge from this episode to the next episode where we really will have conversations about the benefits and detractions of these choices. So,
yeah, this one lives a little bit in the middle of the generalized things we've been discussing versus the very specific things we'll get to next time.
Exactly. So do you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
Why don't I read it? And then you can weigh in, since I know this is a question you've probably already not only given some thought to, but probably answered.
Yes.
And it begins, as many of these have, and I'm happy for. First, hi, Dave and Jon. Thank you for everything that you do. You're welcome. I'm a longtime listener of the podcast, and all of your episodes have played a significant role in my journey to law school. It's very kind and very sweet, and we're grateful to have played a part. My question
Very nice.
is, if you both have any guidance on what I should do next, here's the background. I took the LSAT in September and December and scored, interestingly enough, a 153 both times. I decided to go through with the application process and ended up with the following. These were the acceptances, and I'll give the schools and a little bit of the financials. Loyola with $30,000 a year. University of Miami, $27,000.
Scholarships, by the way.
These are scholarships. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cardozo, $20,000 a year. Chapman, $18,000 a year, and then some waitlists, which obviously we won't know the money for. Emory, USC, which is cool, and then Columbia.
Okay, so we do know the money on the waitlist was zero.
That's what it seems like. Of course, those didn't get negotiated to their final prices, but yes.
You got to get in first.
That's fair. That's right.
So, and I remember looking at this and I was like, Loyola 30, University of Miami 27, Cardozo 20, Chapman 18. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, all right, so we're going to knock Chapman out and so forth. I was already calculating this through. But of course, the one thing about the money that you have there that is deceptive is you are missing the real figure that matters to me. It's not so much about how much money they give you, because it's a red herring of sorts. Wow, that's a big number.
It's deceptive for sure.
But if the school costs a tremendous amount, then it doesn't matter so much. It's cost of attendance.
Yes.
What you sometimes see listed as COA. So we didn't calculate that out here because there's more to this message, as John will get to in just a second.
Yeah. The fact that Loyola is giving you $10,000 more a year than Cardozo doesn't necessarily mean that you come out $10,000 ahead.
Yeah, sometimes people come to me and they'll be like, this private school gave me $100,000. I can't believe it, 6 figures. I'm really happy. And my state school only gave me $50,000. I'm bummed out about that. And then you have that conversation where you're like, right, but how much does your state school cost per year, and how much does that private school cost?
Right.
And they come back and they're like, well, the state school would be cheaper. I'm like, isn't that really what we should focus on, as opposed to you feel like, oh, I should have gotten more money? It's the cost of attendance that you should focus on, because I guarantee you the schools know exactly how this works out.
Yeah, it really comes down to the net, which a lot of people can overlook in the face of, what seems like a really generous offer.
I got 100,000 sounds really good versus I got 50,000. But when you're paying the debt on the more expensive school, the 100,000, it doesn't feel any better.
It can feel a lot worse, in fact.
So at this point, we were about, ready to take a look at the cost of attendance and, request more information.
Right.
I have strong feelings about that, but then there was more.
There is more. So they've got 2 153s. Those offers some wait lists. Here's where things get interesting. It says, over the past few months, I've continued studying and now have an average score of a 168, ranging all the way up to 173. And I like this part. Thanks to PowerScore! Exclamation point.
Now we're really happy here.
Now we're cooking.
This is my favorite message so far.
Yeah, seriously.
I've liked them all, especially the Guinness one.
This is where the message for me becomes, I think, my favorite, despite what I'm about to say. I registered for the April exam, but now that it's most likely going to be canceled, I'm not sure if only submitting a letter of continued interest will be enough to get me off the wait lists. What should I do? And there is more information. Do you want me to read the footnote?
Let's have it.
Okay. I'm an URM, an underrepresented minority that has extensive experience in the music industry.
Cool.
Respect. Cool. Yep. I want to become an entertainment or music attorney, but it's very important to me, and understandably, that I go to law school in a big city, LA, New York, Atlanta, to stay around the industry, and I strongly prefer to stay in LA. So, what's up, neighbor? I also have very little saved up for law school, so I have to pay attention to scholarships. I know that prestige helps a great deal with job opportunities. My top choice is currently USC, so University of Southern California. Those are all of the swirling factors involved here. And they're waitlisted at USC.
Waitlisted at USC, in at Loyola, which is basically in downtown Los Angeles. Not too far from USC, actually.
Nope.
At least as LA terms go. And Loyola's got a cool new, a cool law school designed by Frank Gehry. So it's kind of an interesting place. Whereas USC has that more historic campus, coliseums there, and all sorts of good things like that.
I like both of those campuses quite a lot, in fact.
Yes.
Spend some time there.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting here is that it looks as if in her situation that what's happening is she is like, all right, I'm going to have to decide whether I go to Loyola or whether I have a huge debt load at USC. And so this to me is where we actually pivot. She's applied with a 153 and actually gotten pretty good results, in my opinion.
Me too, yes.
And it may very well be that the music industry experience could be really cool. First off, congrats to her, because I think it's a really interesting thing to be involved in. I'm always impressed by people involved in artistic endeavors. So I think that extensive experience and understanding the goals of these are the cities I want to stay in. I really want to stay in LA. I love the focus there. But here's the thing. I don't think you should continue your applications, interestingly enough. And here's why. You've gotten these results with a 153. You're now averaging in the upper 160s and sometimes hitting the 170s. When you said, I don't have a whole lot saved up for law school, so I have to pay attention to scholarships, what I immediately thought was, this is what you need to do. Whenever the LSAC comes back, take it. You got screwed out of April. And you know, I understand that would have been a game changer for you if you'd gone out and posted, say your average 168. You would have seen these schools jump up their financials. You would have seen all these wait lists turn into acceptances. And so what I'm thinking is, because that's off the table, if it is possible, I would probably wait it out for a year, because you applying with even a 165 at the low end of your current average range, your outcomes here are going to be completely different. And places like Loyola are going to start saying, oh, no, we're going to give you a full ride.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the USCs coming in who are giving you a big percentage. Then you're going to be debating, all right, between no debt and a very low debt to go to a school that's top 25 or better. So it's a really cool situation to be in, although it's got to be frustrating, because it's like, well, I was planning on taking it. I was going to improve. I was going to do everything right. We understand that. And this is one of the unfortunate side effects. But you are in such a unique and positive position. You've had great success already. You had 15 points to your LSAT score. The doors that open are on the floors of this building that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah, you're not even playing the same sport.
Yeah, you just take an elevator and you rise 30 floors instantaneously with something like that. It is a complete game changer. In the parlance of the music industry, it's like you just have a hit record. You know, all of a sudden you turn into Billie Eilish, you got the number one, and it's like, who was that person last year? And now you're like, they're everywhere.
Yeah, now
that's what happens.
James Bond theme songs. So yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good analogy on your end. That's exactly what this becomes.
So that would be my plan. Is I would actually, I would probably decline all these offers and explain why. If you've made friends at some of these law schools and some dean calls you up and says, what's going on? You'd be like, look, I'm averaging an LSAT score that's way higher. I'm going to apply again next year. But I think that I would do myself a disservice, because that's what you're doing. You would be, if you just took one of these offers, you would probably be tossing away anywhere from, I don't know, $50,000 to $200,000 in debt. And taking it on, as opposed to erasing it by waiting a year. And if you can keep on working, and it looks like you're in LA, you strongly prefer to stay there. If you can keep on working in Los Angeles and it becomes a wash, nobody wants to wait a year to get ahead, but that would, to me, be by far the most prudent decision here.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't make any. I wouldn't take any of these acceptances yet. Let's see what the schools do too. It's possible that the June LSAT somehow runs. I think you and I are both a little dubious on that, but maybe these schools say, look, give us a better June score and see what happens. And then you don't have to wait a year, potentially.
Or conceivably even July.
Or July.
The problem is that she's going to run into seat deposit soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's going to have to make some decisions. And it's, you can call up USC and be like, here's my dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I'm scoring, and I never got a chance to show that. And USC will be sympathetic. Oh, we're sorry. That's really great. But they can't report hopes and expectations. They have to report the black and white that is on the page. So I think you're right. Wait it out as long as you can. And if you need to make a seat deposit somewhere, go ahead and do that. But really watch to see whether or not June plays out, or if schools are willing to accept July, because I think we may find some schools that previously didn't think July was worth their time are all of a sudden going to discover that July sounds good to them.
Yeah.
So you might still have an out this year, but if that doesn't work out, and there's a high chance that it won't, I would take a year off, get out of the cycle. In other words, the last question in this whole mailbag is, don't make the choice.
Yeah. It's strange that you and I very rarely give that kind of advice, but in this case, I'm in complete agreement with you.
Next time it'll be all about making the choice and actually deciding on which school it is. So that's the next topic that'll come up. But at least for now, we'll end it on that very unusual pass for another year in all likelihood approach.
Perfect. And I know you usually ask me if I have any final thoughts. I don't. That is a perfect encapsulation of my final thoughts.
Well, neither do I.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and call it close on another episode. If you get a chance, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube, or anywhere else you may find it. Give us a rating. And if you have questions, As you see, we will answer them. We didn't get to all of them, unfortunately, and we'll get to some more in our next episode, which will be coming up very soon. But we certainly try to answer everything that we can. You can send those questions to lsatpodcast@powerscore.com. So on behalf of Jon and myself, have a great week, a great couple of days. Be safe, stay away from other people, stay optimistic. This will all pass. Things will get better. Thank you so much.